I'm back with Archbishop Lazar Puhalo, the founder of All Saints Monastery. The Eastern Orthodox have a very different understanding of the notions of sin and hell. And can you explain why you think that that's very important in a day and age where Christianity in particular has been linked to violence?
Yeah, you know, one of the problems that we understand from an Eastern perspective, Photios Kontoglou, the late Greek teacher and iconographer, once said that atheism is not disbelief in God, but the rejection of the Western God. Because the Western God is the violent sort. And one has to look at the Inquisitions, for example, which were justified by the concept of God and who God is. Sin is missing the mark or the goal for which we've been created, and that is to have everlasting life through union with God. And anything, even virtue, which separates you from God is sin. So we don't want to talk about sin, you know. Sin is the habitual misuse of our energies. It's a kind of illness that needs to be healed.
A healing?
It's a healing.
That's a very different language than you're a bad person, you need to be...
Yeah, yeah. Well, even the word passion means suffering. It doesn't mean sin. And passions are inner human sufferings, which become so intense that they lead people into doing things which separate them from God, therefore sin.
Well, that would produce a very different reaction if I thought of someone as suffering, as a very different response inside of me than I saw them as a sinner.
That's why co-suffering, the concept of co-suffering, the mystery of redemption is the mystery of the co-suffering love of God with mankind. It has nothing to do with juridical justification. Christ did not die on the cross to satisfy the justice of an angry God. But the image of Christ, the whole life of Christ on earth, where Christ endured the same sufferings as mankind, and Paul makes a point of that in his letter to the Hebrews, who takes upon himself our suffering. Why take upon himself our suffering? He identifies and reaches inside our suffering in order to heal it. And so sin is something that we need to deal with in a healing way. The whole ministry of Christ on earth was a healing ministry. It wasn't a juridical expedition. Everything he did was about healing.
How is it that in the West, I mean, because this is one of your critiques, how is it that Western Christianity has been so inundated with models of, you know, judgmentalism and anger and violence? Where did that come from?
After the Dark Ages in the West, which, remember, did not occur in the East, the East Roman Empire didn't experience the Dark Ages. The only forms of organized thought that were available for the re-enlightenment were the Muslim, Islamic schools of Aristotelianism in Spain, and the dialectic of the law court. And a lot of it came from the dialectic of the law court, the Roman law court. The juridical idea of atonement, which was a novel doctrine, it only came about in about around 1100, quite late in history, and was completely unknown in the church before that by anyone. Was based by Anselm of Canterbury on the fact that there had to be a legal action, a legal response. In other words, there had to be the dialectic of the law court involved in redemption. Consequently, he created the doctrine of atonement in his book, Cur Deus Homo, Why God Became Man.
You're placing the blame of a lot of what I would say in 21st century Christianity, which has been known as this judgmental kind of thing. You're saying a lot of that's at the blame of Anselm.
Well, a good bit of it's the blame of Anselm. A great deal of it's the blame of Augustine of Hippo, who was a brilliant writer, unfortunately, because he took a lot of people down his false path with him. And of course, Tertullian, who was a lawyer. In the West, these people are all considered fathers of the church. We don't consider them anything like that.
So the Orthodox, Eastern Orthodox Christianity, you're trying to, in your engagement with other religions, trying to give a different way of understanding the history of Christianity, that there's another way of understanding what faith is all about.
Well, I want people to understand something that's palatable to a younger generation who have grown weary and tired of Christian hypocrisies and bigotries, and also really don't want any part of the Western God, the Western concept of God. As, you know, this in the hands of an angry God sort of thing. When you see Christ with a woman taken in adultery and his sweet, gentle way of responding to her, or with Photini, the woman at the well, the Samaritan woman, where he accuses her of nothing but simply opens her heart. And the woman taken in adultery, it's clear to me that the only way she could have fulfilled his request that she go and sin no more is if he had penetrated her heart with a special grace, the grace of co-suffering love and healing.
We have 1 minute left only.
Okay.
Give me in a snapshot, why is iconography so important in the Eastern Orthodox Church?
Iconography is important because it's another language into which the Scripture is translated. That's why it is painted according to very strict conventions. You can't write your own Bible, therefore you can't paint your own Bible. And remember that up until the end of the 1800s or the beginning of the 1900s, the majority of people couldn't read. So iconography developed as a solution for people who couldn't read the Scripture, but who could see it visually.
And obviously, all of your liturgy uses these images as a way to draw people
No, the liturgy is iconographic. The liturgy is always eschatological. The liturgy always deals with the culmination of human history as a joyous event towards which we look forward, not as something to be feared.
Wow. It's wonderful to have you on the show, and I love that you're trying to give a different way of understanding what Christianity and religion could be in our day and age. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. Be sure to visit Archbishop's website, displayed at the bottom of your screen.